instead of starting with the usual stuff, I'm going to start with, although there's something else up there obviously, the BBC biasness. We all know that they're totally corrupt. They are fully backing the EU. But I was reading earlier that they're reporting about Hong Kong and the police in Hong Kong firing rubber bullets at the men and women that aren't happy with what's going on about some extradition treaty. And you might say, well, what's biased about that? Well, what's biased about that is the fact that they haven't reported once about the horrendous deaths, maiming, shooting of rubber bullets, using explosives, beating, gassing that's going on in France. But if it's Hong Kong, if it's part of the agenda, we'll report it. But when we're told not to, well, we won't. Now, to be fair, they are not totally to blame for this one, because of course the wonderful British government have issued a D notice to all supposed reporters that they can't report about what's going on in France. However, reporter with any bollocks would ignore that, and yes, they'd risk imprisonment, but that's what used to happen. They used to ignore shit like that and report what was going on. But nowadays, of course, the press are a bought and paid for propaganda arm of the dictatorship known as the British government. Now I've got that out of the way, let's move on. Bailiffs for council tax. Keep your doors locked at all times. If you have bailiffs, enforcement officers, officer being a military term, involved, a bailiff only has peaceful entry for a civil debt. Peaceful. This means entry through an open or unlocked door, or if you let him in. The only time a bailiff can force entry for a civil debt is if they have been in the property previously and levied goods, which means that basically that they've scammed you and you've let them in, and they've got like, yeah, oh, TV, computer, laptop, yeah, anything like that. So never ever let a bailiff into your property. They can only charge 3 times. Basically, they come round 3 times, then they have to never come round again. Well, never's probably a lot bit long, but you know, they'll pass whatever it is back to the alleged creditor. But can call as many times as they want. This is why it is important to keep doors locked at all times. If no collection is made within 90 days, the debt will be sent back to the council. £75 when passed from council to bailiffs, £235 first visit, £110 if they remove goods for sale. If you have any valuables in outside sheds or a vehicle that is not on finance or Motability, if you watch the bailiff video I did recently, this totally applies, move this out of the way. In other words, park it away from where you live, or if you've got a garage, in the garage. Always film any bailiff visit to protect yourself in the event that the bailiff acts improperly, which they do every single time. You will then have evidence to report him for a misconduct or any criminal offences he may commit. Don't speak to the bailiffs on the phone. The calls are not admissible in court, so bailiffs regularly tell blatant lies on the phone. Bailiffs can only enter without using force and through an open door. They are not allowed to push past you. If you are classed as vulnerable, the regulations state that they must hand it back to the council when they become aware that you are vulnerable. Most times they wait until they are notified in writing. If you are not vulnerable, you can have it sent back to the council by asking for more time to pay, under clause 4.4 of the Department of Communities and Local Government Guideline documents. Once the debt is back with the council, you can set up an affordable repayment plan minus the bailiff fees. The councils will always try and say, no, we're not accepting that, because they want you to pay the criminal bailiffs. The bailiffs may lie and say he/she is taking your goods, getting a locksmith. Remember, he/she want their commission, so disregard these threats. One good way to get council tax reduced is to apply for a Section 13A LGFA 1992 discount. An application sent to the 151 officer at the council cannot be ignored. They must address your concerns, and you can appeal any decision to an independent adjudicator. Only deal with the council for council tax. Never ignore, as this can eventually create a case for them trying to commit you to prison. Bailiffs can only call between the hours of 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. Again, if you see, go and watch the video, the bailiff video I put out yesterday or the day before. They're there, and it's after 9 p.m. Another reason why they had to go, but also because, as I said to them in the first place, you got no chance. Are you classed as vulnerable? Generally, a person is considered to be vulnerable if it would be unreasonable to expect them to be able to deal with the problem themselves. There is no legal definition of a vulnerable person, but the national standards for taking control of goods says this could include older people, disabled people, the seriously ill, the recently bereaved. Just like Sue was recently bereaved, they did not even buried a mother when they criminally, without any warrant, stole Tom and Sue's property. Single parent families, pregnant women and unemployed people, those with health problems, those who have obvious difficulty in understanding, speaking or reading English, people with mental health issues. Under the Disability Discrimination Act 1995, anyone who has an illness that has lasted longer than 12 months is considered disabled under the Act. Bear that in mind, very important. If you fall into any of the above categories and have bailiffs levying distress, there is a vulnerable person templates available in the files section to send to bailiffs, council, courts, etc. Many dishonest bailiffs will try to ignore the fact that someone is vulnerable, so it is important to notify them in writing to their head office by email and letter. You should also notify the creditor, council or court that has instructed the bailiff. Usually no court, it's all bullshit. Disregard any objections from the bailiffs. You are simply notifying them. After notifying them, only communicate with the creditor, council or court. Bailiffs can only call between the hours of 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. Never ignore demands for money, because for those that's been following me for a while will know that if you ignore anything, this is why the three letters work so brilliantly. If you ignore it, if they ignore what you sent, they are agreeing. They accept what you're saying. Never ignore demands for money. Dispute them. Saying ignore it or pay it will get you blocked. Oh, that's on this, where I got this information from. Under the court civil procedure rules, if you ignore a demand for money, you admit that you owe it, which is what I just said. Never ignore bailiffs, always dispute their fees. This is from a Facebook group. I can't recall exactly which one it was at the moment, but thanks to them for putting the information out so nicely. You owe me money. I bought your debt. Under the Bills of Exchange Act, if someone buys your debt, they've paid your debt. Don't believe what I'm saying here? Go and check it out. If someone buys your debt, they have paid your debt off for you without asking you. So, cheers. I'll get back to the start of this. You owe me money. I bought your debt. You would need a valid deed of assignment, which of course is in the three letters. I have this notice of assignment, which I just printed. Pay up. Provide the deed of assignment or go away. Now, more hypocrisy here. and utter corruption from the government. Michael Gove banned 4 teachers for cocaine possession, and if you recall recently, he's admitted he's a cokehead. At least 4 teachers were banned from the profession for being caught with cocaine during Michael Gove's tenure as Education Secretary. The Conservative Party leadership contender was criticised this weekend after it emerged he had taken cocaine while working as a journalist 20 years ago. I don't care how long ago, and who's to say he's not still taking it. Analysts of teacher misconduct hearings by schools week found during Gove's tenure at least 8 teachers were banned for drug-related offences. 4 of these included offences relating to cocaine, and 3 of the 4 teachers were banned for the profession for life. Decisions to ban teachers are made by somebody acting on behalf of the Secretary of State. Gove has been accused of hypocrisy from MPs over his cocaine admission. Speaking at his leadership bid launch today, Gove was questioned why his admission didn't disqualify him from being Prime Minister when teachers can be disqualified for possessing the drug. If someone had said that before they entered teaching they made mistakes, that would be no bar. And there's been some misreporting about the way those terms apply to teachers. LEDs have damaging health effects, French assessment says. While this article focuses on light-emitting diodes, LEDs, please understand that compact fluorescent light bulbs, CFLs, are far worse. Not only do they have the same digital light problems as LEDs, but they also have mercury in them and cause dirty electricity in the 62 kilohertz range. And there's a video I put out years and years ago now all about dirty energy. Just search for dirty energy and you'll find it. If you have any fluorescent bulbs in your homes, you would be strongly advised to carefully replace them because if you break the bulb, there are certain precautions you need to take to clean it up, including hazmat suits. In fact, the US Environment Protection Agency has special rules for cleaning up broken CFLs, which include opening windows, airing out the room and shutting off the heat or air conditioning for several hours so as not to disturb the leaked mercury. Another kill thing, and that's why they're doing these bulbs are like this. You also are to call for local government about proper disposal of fragments, and when in doubt to call a poison control centre. Now, here's more World War III bullshit for you. US blames Iran for oil tanker attack in Gulf of Oman amid rising tensions. Now, never forget, they want to invade Iran. They want war with Iran and to start World War III, thermonuclear war. That's what this is all about. And if you think Trump's a goodie, stop drinking the Kool-Aid. US points finger of blame at Iran. Well, there's a shock. They get the point the finger at Iran for everything. I'm surprised that the Skripal thing wasn't blamed on Iran, to be honest with you. Oil prices surged after suspected tanker attack. There's another reason for it. 2 tankers reportedly damaged by explosions. Iran suspicions doesn't begin to describe this morning. Almost 50 sailors rescued from tankers. Analysts, the Strait of Hormuz became the world's most important choke point. This is utter propaganda to back up their attempt to cause World War III. Journalists and whistleblowers will go to jail under new national security laws. When are we going to lock the bastard criminals in Parliament up? All of them. There was no concerted campaign, no unified push by the media to stop this bill. Because they're all bought and paid for wankers. Which dramatically expands the powers of intelligence agencies while creating new offences for disclosing information about their operations. They don't want it out there that they're a bunch of thieving, crooked bastards, and we all know that. Journalists will be jailed. It might take a year or two or even longer, but journalists and whistleblowers will face prison as a result of the first tranche of national security legislation that was passed in the Senate late on Thursday. They don't want you talking about what's really going on, and if you do, we're going to lock you up. That's what you can take from that. CIA data show 14-year project on controlling human behaviour about the archive. This is a digitised version of an article from the Times print archive. Before the start of online publications in '96 to preserve the articles as they originally appeared, the Times does not alter, edit or update them. Occasionally, the digitisation process introduces transcription errors or other problems. Please send reports. Washington, July 20. The Central Intelligence Agency conducted a 14-year program to find out ways to control human behavior through the use of chemical, biological or radiological material. 5G if you want. According to agency documents made public today by John Marks, a freelance journalist, Mr. Marks, an associate of the Centre for National Security Studies, asserted at a news conference that admin Stansfield Turner, Director of Central Intelligence, is a letter to the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence last week seriously distorted what the CIA research program involved. Mr. Marks said that based on documents about the program he had received under the Freedom of Information Act, he had concluded that Admiral Turner seems to be practicing what used to be called a modified limited hangout, when he called the agency's activity a program of experimentation with drugs. As with all these things, links are in the description unless I've gone on a bit too long, in which case it only lets you put so many links in, so try one of the other YouTube's usually not too bad, but you can try the other channels, BitChute or Dailymotion. Even the celebrities are coming out against the corrupt government and biased BBC. Ben Fogle donates entire animal park salary to pay for pensioners' TV licence. Ben Fogle has decided to put his own money towards paying for the pensioners' TV licence after the BBC restricting free TV licence to those over 75 receiving pension credit. The TV presenter has stepped in. He was disappointed by the decision, but added that he doesn't entirely blame the broadcaster. Well, I do. Now it's time for more utter bullshit. Global sea level rise. What it means to you and your business. Rapidly growing cities are ongoing effects on climate change and making more people vulnerable to rising sea level. Of course, climate change has been here forever. And let's not forget, it was originally called global warming, but when all the evidence proves that that's an utter lie and deceit, they changed it to climate change. So even if it gets hotter or colder, it's still your fault and we're going to tax you on it. 2/3 of the global population is expected to live in cities by 2050, and already an estimated 800 million people live in more than 570 coastal cities vulnerable to sea level rise of 0.5 metres by 2050. In a vicious circle, urbanisation not only concentrates people and property in areas of potential danger and disruption, it also exacerbates those risks, for example by destroying natural sources of resilience such as coastal mangroves and increasing the strain on groundwater reserves. Intensifying impacts will render an increased amount of land uninhabitable. This is a total depopulation article. Absolutely, that's what it's about. The Church of England's £10.5 billion fund will now invest in cannabis. But it's got no medical benefits. Theresa May said so, and we all know we can trust her. Yeah, to stab us in the back. When Shavo Adadjanyan Bassett of the band System of Down, what the fuck, told me he was launching a cannabis strain called Church. I could not help but find it funny. Weed and religion don't go together, I thought. However, a leafy article by Nathan Poniman suggests otherwise. Modernisation seems to be the key to the enjoyment of non-medical cannabis in the Christian tradition, he wrote. Well, in actual fact, they do have a connection with the church. If Jesus Christ ever actually existed, and he did cure people, what do you think he anointed them with? Cannabis oil. Microwave weapons are prime suspect in ills of US embassy workers. 5G, in other words. Doctors and scientists say microwave strikes may have caused sonic delusions and very real brain damage among embassy staff and family members. US Marines outside the embassy in Havana in February. Diplomats working here reported strange noises and mysterious symptoms that doctors and scientists may have resulted from strikes with microwave weapons. 5G. There you go. It's in your face. They're telling you. And just because they're telling you in a subdued way doesn't mean they're not telling you. They've still told you, so they've done their bit. If you're dumb enough to believe that 5G isn't a danger to humanity, it's your choice. Complete history of Bayer, one of the biggest depopulation companies in the world. How long have I been saying this depopulation shit? And there it is in an article. Bayer AG is a chemical and pharmaceutical giant founded in Barmen, Germany in 1863 by Friedrich Bayer and his partner Johann Friedrich Wiskoff. Today it has its headquarters in Leverkusen, Northern Rhine-Westphalia, Germany. It trademarked acetylsalicylic acid as aspirin in 1899. It also trademarked heroin a year earlier as a non-addictive way to treat things. It worldwide for decades as a cough medicine for children without side effects, despite the well-known dangers of addiction. During the First World War, Bayer turned its attention to the manufacture of chemical weapons, including chlorine gas, which was used to horrendous effect in trenches. It also built up a school for chemical warfare. During this time, Bayer formed a close relationship with German chemical firms including BASF and Hokes. The relationship was formalized in 1925 when Bayer was one of the chemical companies that merged to form the massive German conglomerate it's a big word, really big word, Faben or IG Farben for short. The Sunday Times. Boris poll surges as rivals pitch for cabinet jobs. Gove, Javid and Rab hint at top new roles. Liam's long lost daughter. Britain sends Royal Marines to Gulf crisis to cause more shit. Trans charity put children's secrets online. Telegraph. May's 27 billion spending booby trap for Boris. Lame duck PM is in bid to derail next leader's budget by forcing through education funds. Corbyn plot tax raid on parents' gifts to children. What a shock. Free heroin shooting galleries approved. The Observer. Divided, pessimistic, angry. Survey reveals bleak mood of pre-Brexit UK. We left, have we? 72% fear division will get worse. I can't recall such desperate top pollster. Johnson no deal plan will trigger early election. Mirror. Boris accused of F-word rant over 7 families. The Fail. New boss of Oxfam accused of sex cover-up. He was brought in to clean up after Haiti scandal, but now whistleblower speaks out. People. Fury at ITV's new Jeremy Kyle show. Waste of paper. My nan fancied Corrie Chris first. And finally, I found a way to lose a stone really quickly. It's not hard, in fact it's very easy. Everyone can do it. How you do it: you take a stone, you go into a field and throw it as far as you can, then go looking for it, and when you can't find it, you've just lost a stone.